Welcome everyone to this explainer. Today we're diving into the incredibly high-stakes world of statutory auditors. We often picture auditors as just mere number crunchers, right? But in reality, they act as the ultimate gatekeepers of financial truth in our markets. When an auditor signs off on a report, they aren't just filing paperwork. No, they're giving a guarantee. But what actually happens when that guarantee falls short? Like what happens when a mistake is made? Or worse, a massive fraud is completely missed? Well, today, we're going to climb the ladder of escalating consequences for auditors. We'll move from simple professional missteps all the way up to severe criminal penalties. Okay, so let's just jump right into this roadmap of risk. We've got 6 key areas to cover today: the burden of trust, defining reasonable care, common law and contracts, statutory bounds, criminal liability, and finally, shielding from risk. Let's kick things off with part 1, the burden of trust, the gatekeepers of truth. Let's start with the absolute bedrock of an auditor's job. Every single time a statutory auditor signs an audit report, they are putting their name on the line to say that the financial statements represent a true and fair view of that company. Just imagine for a second that you invested your entire life savings into a business based solely on this certification, right? The auditor carries this profound responsibility, not just to the company's management, but to shareholders and totally separate third parties who put immense reliance on those documents. If the auditor fails and some massive fraud slips through the cracks, the resulting financial ruin, it falls right back on their shoulders. It's a massive burden that demands absolute honesty and extreme carefulness.
Which brings us to part 2, defining reasonable care, the legal baseline.
So the really crucial thing here is understanding the legal baseline expected of these professionals. In common law, we throw the word negligence around a lot. Negligence is essentially an act or a failure to act where the auditor didn't exercise a reasonable degree of skill and care. But what exactly is reasonable? It's kind of like a Goldilocks standard. The law doesn't demand a superhuman, super careful, and expert auditor who never ever misses a single microscopic detail. That's just impossible. Instead, liability is based on failing to act as an ordinary skillful person would in those exact same circumstances. It's notoriously tricky to assess, but it literally forms the bedrock of an auditor's professional duty.
Moving up the ladder, we get to part 3, common law and contracts, the first rung of consequences.
It's actually fascinating how the law treats the relationship between an auditor and their client. The second an appointment is accepted, boom, these strict implied terms are automatically locked right into their contract. Number 1, they have a duty to exercise reasonable care, which we literally just talked about. Number 2, a duty to carry out the work with reasonable expediency, meaning, you can't just take forever to finish the audit while the client's business is hanging in the balance. And number 3, the auditor has a right to reasonable remuneration. Basically, they get paid fairly for their work. Now, if an auditor breaches these implied duties and the client suffers a financial loss because of it, that client can bring an action under contract law for damages. This right here is the very first major rung of liability on our ladder.
Let's take it a step further in part 4, statutory bounds, escaping the gray area.
Now, common law can sometimes be a bit of a gray area, relying heavily on custom and cultural practices. So escalating things further, we hit statutory liability. Specifically, we're looking at the Companies and Allied Matters Act, or CAMA 2020. Section 415 of this act deals directly with civil offenses like misfeasance and breach of trust, and it lays out a very clear step-by-step chain reaction of accountability. Step 1, the auditor fails in their fiduciary duty to exercise necessary care and diligence. Step 2, the company suffers a loss, and the directors can institute a negligence action against the auditor in court. But what if the directors are complicit, or maybe just lazy and do nothing? Well, step 3, individual members or shareholders can actually step up to the plate and take action themselves.
But hold on, there is a very specific catch to that third step. An individual member cannot just run down to the courthouse on a whim. The statute specifically mandates that the member must give the company exactly 30 days notice of their intention before instituting that negligence action. It basically ensures the company gets a fair warning and a chance to handle the mess internally before a shareholder escalates it into a full-blown legal battle. Furthermore, under these statutory rules, the consequences can get incredibly personal. Let's say a company is in the process of winding up, meaning it's shutting down, liquidating its assets. Well, a guilty auditor might be held liable as an officer of the company. If they are found guilty of misfeasance or misusing their position for personal gain, they aren't just fired. No way.
They can be legally required to reach into their own pockets and financially contribute to the company to make up for the losses arising from their breach of trust.
And that brings us to part 5, criminal liability, the climax.
We have now reached the absolute climax of our explainer. We're stepping completely off the civil and statutory rungs and entering the heavy realm of the Nigeria Criminal Code. Here, the stakes shift entirely, from just financial penalties to severe risks to personal freedom. Just look at the stark wording of Section 436. It explicitly states that if an auditor makes, circulates, or publishes a written statement or account that they know to be false in a material particular with the intent to deceive or defraud investors, they are guilty of a felony. This proves that deliberate deception isn't just some regulatory slap on the wrist. Absolutely not. It is a full-blown, life-altering crime.
And the ultimate penalty for this intentional, reckless deceit? A staggering 7 years of imprisonment. Let that sink in. 7 years. This highlights exactly how seriously the legal system takes the concept of financial truth. When an auditor actively participates in fraud, they aren't just failing one client, they're actively damaging the entire economic ecosystem, and the punishment completely reflects the severity of that damage.
Finally, Part 6, Shielding from Risk, Real-World Precautions.
So considering this terrifying ladder of liability we just climbed, how in the world do auditors protect themselves? Well, they can't just rely on professional indemnity insurance. As the source materials point out, that doesn't actually solve the root problem. Instead, they have to proactively prove they exercised due professional care by using some critical shields. They meticulously maintain quality control. They use structured written audit programs. They keep exceptionally proper working papers to document every single decision. They agree on precise duties in their engagement letters, so there's absolutely no confusion about their responsibilities. And crucially, if they take on a brand new client, they obtain thorough knowledge of matters relating to the specific nature of that organization. These aren't just best practices, guys. They are literally an auditor's armor against claims of negligence.
To wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with one final thought regarding this incredibly fragile ecosystem of financial trust. We've seen exactly how auditors can pay with their wallets, their reputations, and even their freedom. But if an auditor completely misses a fraud, who truly pays the price? Is it just the auditor facing a massive lawsuit? Or is it the everyday people, the pensioners, and the employees whose very lives are tied to the truthfulness of those financial statements? The true cost of negligence goes so far beyond the courtroom. Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive into the high-stakes world of auditors' liability. Keep questioning the numbers, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.